What if I told you that everything you've been protecting your entire life, your reputation, your career, your relationships, even your body, none of it is actually you. And the thing that is you has never once been in danger. There's a line buried in an ancient text, over 5,000 years old, that has the power to end every fear you've ever carried. But most people will never hear it, and those who do won't believe it. Not at first. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why the one thing you're most terrified of losing was never yours to lose. But first, let me ask you something. You've been waking up lately with this weight on your chest, haven't you? Not a sharp pain, not anxiety exactly, just this heaviness, like something fundamental has shifted and you can't quite name it. Maybe you lost something recently, a job, a relationship, your health, or maybe nothing dramatic happened at all. You just looked in the mirror one morning and didn't recognize the person staring back. You used to know who you were. You had a title, a role, a story you told yourself. I'm the successful one, I'm the reliable one, I'm the one who holds it all together. And then, piece by piece, that story started to crumble. And the terrifying part isn't that things fell apart. The terrifying part is that you don't know who you are without them. Let me tell you about a man named Vikram, 36 years old, senior product manager at a tech company in Bangalore. The kind of guy whose LinkedIn profile looked like a highlight reel. IIT graduate, fast-tracked promotions, a beautiful apartment in Indiranagar, married to his college sweetheart, Priya. If you had asked anyone who knew him, they'd say Vikram had it all figured out, and for a while, he believed them. Then, in the span of 11 months, everything unraveled. First, the layoff. A company-wide restructuring. Nothing personal, they said, just numbers on a spreadsheet. Vikram walked out of that building carrying a cardboard box, and with it, the identity he had spent 14 years constructing. Then Priya left, not with screaming or slammed doors, worse, with a quiet conversation at the kitchen table. I don't think we've been in love for a long time, Vikram. I think we've just been performing. She was right, and that made it hurt even more. And then his body, the one thing he thought he could always control, betrayed him too. A diagnosis, an autoimmune condition, chronic, manageable, the doctors said, but never going away. Vikram sat in his empty apartment, no job title, no wife, no certainty about his own body, and felt something worse than sadness. He felt like he was disappearing. Because if he wasn't a product manager, if he wasn't Priya's husband, if he wasn't even a healthy man anymore, then who was he? What was left? He stopped answering calls, stopped eating properly. Some nights he'd sit on the floor of his living room, back against the wall, staring at nothing, trying to remember a version of himself that existed before all the labels, and finding nothing. His mother called every day. He let it ring, every single time. But one Thursday evening, it wasn't his mother who showed up at his door. It was his grandfather's old friend, a man everyone called Shastri Uncle. 78 years old, retired professor of philosophy from Mysore University. He had known Vikram since the boy was learning to walk. Vikram hadn't seen him in years, but there he was, thin, white-haired, slightly stooped, with those sharp dark eyes that always seemed to be reading something invisible about you. "Your mother sent me," Shastri Uncle said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. He looked around the apartment, the unwashed dishes piled in the sink, the unopened mail on the counter, the curtains drawn against the afternoon sun. and said nothing about any of it. He simply sat down on the couch, placed his worn leather bag on the floor beside him, and looked at Vikram with a quiet steadiness that was almost unbearable. "Tell me," he said, "what exactly did you lose?" Vikram almost laughed. "Everything. My job, my marriage, my health. I lost everything that made me, me." Shastri uncle was quiet for a long time, the kind of silence that has weight to it. Then he leaned forward and said something that Vikram would replay in his mind for years to come. "Vikram, what if none of those things were ever you? What if your job was just something you did, not something you are? What if your marriage was one chapter in your story, not the whole book? What if even this body is just a house you're living in for a while?" Vikram stared at him. "Then what am I?" Shastri uncle reached into his old leather bag and pulled out a small book, its spine cracked, pages yellowed with decades of turning. He opened it carefully, almost reverently, to a passage he seemed to know by heart. "There is something in you," he said slowly, "that was never born. It has never changed. It cannot be destroyed, not by a layoff letter, not by divorce papers, not by any diagnosis any doctor will ever hand you. The real you, the one behind the name, behind the face, behind every title you've ever held, that has never, not once, been in danger." He tapped the page gently with one weathered finger. The ancient ones called it the Atman, the eternal self, and they said something extraordinary about it. They said that which truly exists can never cease to be, and that which is unreal has never truly existed at all. The seers of truth, those with the eyes to see, they understood this difference. Your body will change, Vikram. Your rules will change. Your health, your relationships, your circumstances, all of it will shift and dissolve like clouds passing across the sky. But the one who is watching all of this, the awareness behind your eyes right now, the consciousness that has been constant through every change since you were a small boy, that does not change. That cannot be cut. That cannot be burned. That cannot be diminished by any force in this universe. "You know what your problem is," the old man said, his voice dropping low. "You've been protecting the wrong thing your whole life." Now hear the original Sanskrit. These are the words that were spoken on a battlefield over 5,000 years ago. Words that carry the same transformative power today as they did the moment they were first uttered. 7 verses, 7 truths that have the power to dissolve every false identity you have ever clung to. Listen to them not just with your mind, but with something deeper. Nasto vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate satah. Ubhayorapi drishtontas tvanayos tattvadarshibhi. Avinashitu tadvidhiyena sarvamidam tatam. Vinash amvayasyasya na kaschit kartumarhati. Antavant ime deha nityasyoktaah sharirina. Anashino aprameyasya tasmadyudhyasva bharat. Ya enam veti hantaram यश्चैनं मन्यते हतम. उभौ न विजानितो नायम हन्ति न हन्यते. न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचिन. नायम भूत्वा भविता वा न भूय. अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे. वेदा विनाशिनं नित्यं य एनं मज्मव्ययम्. Katham sa purushah partha kam ghatayati hantikam vasansi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grihnati naro aparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirna nyanyani sanyati navani dehi. Here is what these sacred words mean. Verse 16. The unreal has no lasting existence. The real never ceases to be. The seers of truth have clearly perceived the final conclusion of both. Verse 17. Know that which pervades this entire universe to be indestructible. No one has the power to destroy that imperishable essence. Verse 18. Only the physical bodies are perishable, but the soul that dwells within, the true self, is eternal, indestructible, and beyond all measure. Therefore, O Arjuna, arise and fulfill your duty. Verse 19. The one who thinks the soul can kill and the one who believes the soul can be killed, both are trapped in ignorance. The soul neither kills nor can it ever be killed. Verse 20. The soul is never born and it never dies. It did not come into being in the past and it will not cease to exist in the future. It is unborn, eternal, ever-existing and primeval. It is not destroyed when the body is destroyed. Verse 21. One who truly knows the soul to be indestructible, eternal, unborn, and imperishable, how can such a person cause harm to anyone or be harmed? And then verse 22, perhaps the most beautiful metaphor ever spoken about death, change, and transformation. Just as a person casts off worn-out garments and puts on new ones, so does the embodied soul cast off worn-out bodies and enter new ones. Your body is a garment. Your job title is a garment. Your marriage was a garment. Your health is a garment. And you are the one who wears them all. Now, here is where these words come from. Thousands of years ago, a warrior prince named Arjuna stood frozen between two massive armies on a battlefield called Kurukshetra. On both sides were people he loved, teachers who had shaped him, cousins he had laughed with as a boy, elders who had blessed him with their own hands. He was commanded to fight, and he could not bring himself to do it. Not because he was a coward. Arjuna was perhaps the greatest warrior of his age. He collapsed because he believed that if these people died, something real and irreplaceable would be destroyed forever. He believed loss was final, that death was the end of the story. His hands trembled. His legendary bow Gandiv slipped from his fingers. His mouth went dry. His mind fractured under the weight of it all. And in that moment of absolute crisis, when he had nothing left, wisdom was spoken to him. The very verses you just heard. He was told, "You are grieving for what does not deserve grief. The wise grieve neither for the living nor for the dead, because the true self can never be destroyed." When you strip it all away, Arjuna's crisis was never really about war. It was about identity. It was about the terror of watching everything familiar get ripped away and being left with one unbearable question: what remains? The exact same question Vikram asked, sitting on the cold floor of his empty apartment. The exact same question you might be asking right now. Now, back to Vikram. He didn't transform overnight, and I want to be honest with you about that. He didn't leap off the floor with sudden clarity and begin a glorious new chapter the next morning. That's not how real change works. That's not how real healing works. But something did shift that evening with Shastri uncle. A crack, just a hairline fracture, appeared in the wall Vikram had built between himself and a truth he wasn't ready to face. Shastri uncle left after 2 quiet hours, but he left behind that old yellowed book. And over the following weeks, Vikram kept returning to those verses, reading them in the pale morning light, sitting with them in the silence of night, letting the words settle into places that logic couldn't reach. And slowly, something began to separate inside him, like oil rising to the surface of water. He began to see, not just intellectually, but somewhere deep in his bones, that there was a profound difference between what happened to him and what he was. The layoff happened to his career, not to him. The divorce happened to his marriage, not to him. The illness happened to his body, not to him. He, the real he, was still there, untouched. He started small. A walk in Cubbon Park every morning. Not to fix anything, not to get better, just to notice. The trees, the light filtering through the canopy of leaves. The simple, profound fact that he was aware. That awareness, that quiet, witnessing presence had been there when he was 5 years old, playing in his grandmother's garden. And it was here now, unchanged, undiminished, the same presence wearing a different garment. He began to hold his identity more lightly. When people at gatherings asked, "So what do you do?" he no longer felt the old panic rising in his throat. Because the answer to that question was no longer load-bearing. It no longer held up his entire sense of self. He found a new position eventually, at a smaller company. Less prestige, less salary, more meaning. He didn't remarry. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That wasn't the point. And the autoimmune condition, it was still there. Some mornings his joints ached so badly he could barely climb out of bed. But Vikram was no longer a man in crisis. He was a man who had discovered something that could not be taken from him. Not by a corporation, not by a spouse, not by his own failing body. He had found the one thing that does not change. And once you find that, once you really truly find it, you stop being afraid of losing everything else. Now, let me ask you something. Are you living the same struggle right now? You feel completely defined by your title or your relationship, and the mere thought of losing it makes your stomach drop. Something already crumbled in your life, and you keep telling everyone you're fine, but you haven't truly felt like yourself in months. Every morning begins with a quiet, invisible panic, this desperate scramble to prove that you still matter, that you still belong. And deep down, there's a voice whispering that if people saw the real you, stripped of the resume, the relationship, the performance, there would be nothing worth seeing. If even one of those landed, then these 7 verses were waiting for you today. Here is your Gita journal question for today. If everything external was stripped away tomorrow, your job, your relationships, your health, your reputation, even your name, what is the one thing about you that would still remain? What is the part of you that has never once changed, even as everything around you has? Write your answer in the comments below. Not for anyone else, for yourself. Because sometimes the most important truths only become real when you finally put them into words. And remember this, you were never your job title. You were never your diagnosis. You were never your worst failure or your greatest achievement. Those were only garments, and you are the one who was wearing them all along, untouched, unbroken, and still here.